Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our devotional series. We're in a book called Learning to Live and Love Like Jesus, which is essentially a book on spiritual formation. We're studying how are our souls formed or reformed into the image of Christ. How can they be reformed to live and love more like Jesus did? And an analogy here might be helpful because a lot of spiritual formation has to do with spiritual exercises or spiritual practices. And if you think in the physical world, we understand that if I do certain physical exercises or practices with enough frequency, intensity, and over a long enough period of time, it will reshape my physical being. Now, the same holds true in the spiritual. If I can simply repeat spiritual exercises or practices with enough frequency, intensity, and time, that's FIT, that's an acronym, it will begin to reshape or reform my spiritual being as well. Now, we're going to be looking this week at a really interesting one, and it's particularly important, I think, for our day and for our culture. It's the practice of silence. It's something that we don't get a lot of these days. And if you're familiar with the name Bernie Krause is a naturalist. He goes into these, habitats like in jungles or deserts and places like this, and he just he films the sound of nature, and he makes just a rather remarkable statement. In one of the articles I read on him, it says it is now next to impossible in most countries to record uninterrupted natural sound. And then he goes on to say in 1968, that was back when I was a freshman in college, it took 15 hours of recording time to get 1 hour of uninterrupted natural sound. He said today it takes 2,000 hours to get 1 hour of uninterrupted sound. That's pretty amazing when you think about it. But just step back and think, what has happened over your lifetime? Well, we've seen, all kinds of increase in audible sounds, whether it's traffic, highways, airports, trains, jackhammers, chainsaws, mowers, mechanical, industrial sounds. There are over 500 TV channels. There's over 250 satellite radio stations. But it's not just the audible sounds. There's all these inaudible sounds. In other words, there's not a sound, but they make a lot of noise in your head. Think of social media, for example. This nonstop texting, what does it do? It keeps your mind stimulated. How about all these kind of, 100 sort of conversations that you're having on Facebook? It just occupies your mind. I remember going into a grocery store once, and I was looking for a certain brand of cereal, and there were so many brands of cereal on the shelves, I couldn't believe it, and so I actually took the time to count them. There were over 90, I think it was 92, 93 different brands of cereal. So even when we go shopping nowadays, there's so many options, it just sort of overstimulates our minds, and so they're just constantly interrupted, and we desperately need some time for silence. I want to read to you two of my favorite quotes. First one from Henry Nouwen, Catholic priest and a very well-known writer. He says, without silence, it's impossible to grow in the spiritual life. And here's one from our author, Brandon Cook. He says this is what silence is about. It's about establishing time and space to encounter the reality of God in the inner quiet of our hearts. So here's what I want you to do before tomorrow. I want you to just take a little bit of time to give some thought to how have things changed over your lifetime in terms of that Bernie Krause quote about, why it's so much harder now to find uninterrupted time to just be silent. And then identify maybe what are the major noises that are going on in your life. Remember, a problem well defined is half solved.